Hello and welcome to Media News with me, Mark Campbell. Media News aims to be an authentic voice, bringing you the real, truthful stories from the Middle East with a particular focus on the Kurdish question that is often ignored, self-censored or suppressed by the mainstream media platforms. The Kurdish question is ever-evolving and shifting, involving different regional countries, including Turkey, Iran, Iraq and Syria, who have all historically brutally suppressed their own Kurdish populations, and also other regional and international political stakeholders vie for future influence in the region, such as Russia, USA, Israel, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, France, to name but a few. The Kurdish card game, as it is sometimes referred to, of shifting alliances, strategic partnerships, or support for different parties at any one given time, continues, as the Kurds themselves feel increasingly under threat, despite their historic gains and advances that they have achieved in the struggle and defeat of ISIS and the successful defense and rescue of the Yazidi population around Mount Sinjar in August of 2014. This is all especially poignant at this particular moment, post-US withdrawal from Afghanistan, the anniversary of 9/11 as the US reviews its presence in Iraq and Syria, Turkey flexes its expansionist muscles with military invasions into North and East Syria and northern Iraq, and Iran begins shelling Kurdish fighters inside the borders of northern Iraq on this very day. To help us try to understand and untangle some of the geopolitical complexities of these developments, we are very pleased today to be joined by Dr. Arzu Yilmaz. Dr. Yilmaz obtained her PhD in international relations from Ankara University in Turkey, where she wrote her dissertation on Kurdish refugees in the Kurdistan region of Iraq. Prior to this, she received her MA on international relations and MA in gender studies, also from the Ankara University. She spent 7 years in the Kurdistan region of Iraq as a lecturer in the Department of Political Science at the University of Duhok, and as the chair of the Department of International Relations at the American University of Kurdistan. Then she moved to Berlin in 2018 as Istanbul Policy Center Mercator Fellow at the German Institute for International and Security Affairs. Since October 2019, Dr. Yilmaz has worked as an Alexandra von Humboldt Scholar at the University of Hamburg. Dr. Yilmaz is the author of the book From Atrush to Mahmur, Kurdish Refugees and Reconstruction Identity, published in 2016. Her academic areas of interest are Middle East politics, migration, and gender studies, while she has also published extensively on the Kurdish question in academic journals, as well as in newspapers and online publications. Dr. Yilmaz, welcome to Media News Podcasts.
Hello, Mark. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. It's lovely to have you. Can I perhaps begin by suggesting that this is quite a poignant moment to be discussing these issues, as the US pullout of Afghanistan is complete, with the Taliban firmly in control of Kabul, and just 2 days or so before the 20th anniversary of the downing of the Twin Towers by Al-Qaeda in New York, with nearly 3,000 deaths, we're all left wondering, what was the so-called war on terror all about? And whether, if a similar withdrawal of US troops from Iraq were to happen, would there be a similar rush by radical forces to fill the vacuum of power in Iraq too? So my first question then to you, after Afghanistan, is the US now planning to pull out of Iraq? And if so, what are the likely outcomes of such a withdrawal?
The US says so. They have already declared that by the end of this year, they will withdraw their combat forces from Iraq. So only equip and train within the context of NATO mission, equip and train personnel will remain in Iraq. But in comparison with Afghanistan, I can say that just the opposite, what I expect actually, just the opposite will happen. I mean, for instance, I expect except the Iraqi Kurdistan or the Kurds in the north, the rest of Iraq will celebrate the American withdrawal. Because, I mean, even forget the 3 decades long American presence in Iraq, the last 10 years have showed us that, particularly the demonstrations took place since 2019. Long and short, the Iraqis are tired of American in Iraq. This is the first dimension. The second dimension is Iranian influence in Iraq, because Iranian has so far seized control by supporting Hajj Shabi in Iraq. So very often in recent years, they are calling American to withdraw from Iraq. So, and they have a quite remarkable support for this cause. And that's why I think, first, because of being tired of American fruitless and presence in Iraq, which only caused more chaos in Iraq. Second, as demonstrations showed us, they don't want neither American nor any foreign interference in Iraqi policy. And third, because of Iranian influence through Hajj Shabi, which in recent years often call American to withdraw. So these three reasons helped me to think that most probably Iraqis will celebrate the American withdrawal. We will not see anything similar with what we have seen in Afghanistan.
So do you think what sort of forces, if there's any vacuum to fill when US forces do withdraw, what sort of forces can you imagine would fill that vacuum?
First and foremost, in short term, we can expect the Iranian influence in Iraq would increase inevitably. Actually, one of the failures of the US in Iraq is to block or contain Iranian influence, not only in Iraq, in the Middle East as a whole, including Syria and Lebanon and so forth. So the first outcome, most probably, will be the increase in Iranian influence in Iraqi policies. Second, Hajj Shabis, because this has been another crucial issue, particularly within the context of reconstruction of Iraq after 2014, when Iraq once again became a failed state after the emergence of ISIS. So Hajj Shabi, they tried to integrate Hajj Shabi as a part of Iraqi national forces, which also failed. And still, we can say that Hajj Shabi is under the control of Iran more than Baghdad. So given that Hajj Shabi's control in Iraq would extend, most probably. And however, what the American, as far as I see, trying to do in Iraq, or in terms of fulfilling the gap they will leave behind them, is a kind of favorable balance of power, among the neighboring countries. This is seems to be the plan of American, but we are not sure whether they would succeed in doing so or not.
Okay, and where would that then leave the Kurdistan regional government, who have been quite relying on American support?
Yes, that's true. I mean, the security architecture of Kurdistan in Iraq totally collapsed because it was basically relying on American military presence and political support. For sure, to some extent, such a political support will continue, but the absence of combat forces, American combat forces, would make a radical change in the security architecture of Kurdistan. And given that, actually, what is taking place currently gives us an idea about what would take place after the American withdrawal. And given that, like the Turkish operations in Iraqi Kurdistan By the way, I would like to remind one of the other development, which is the expansion of NATO mission in Iraq. Although it is a non-combat mission, it seems that a NATO member, Turkey, with its forces implementing such a would implement, and actually at this moment also implementing, but also in future will fulfill this gap, which is not in favor of Kurds apparently. On the other hand, Iran, as you may have also observed in recent years, actually, attacking the Kurds, not only the Iranian Kurdish parties, but also by Hajj Shabi directly addressing the Erbil airport or the American bases and so forth. At the end of the day, actually, before the American withdrawal, since 2017, indeed, the security is already quite fragile in Kurdistan. So long and short, that's why I have mentioned about this favorable balance of power depending on the support of neighboring countries of Iraq, because it seems that American, by building up a favorable balance of power among Iran, Saudi Arabia, and Turkey, tries to, secure at least the territorial integrity of Iraq, which has been the primary priority for America for decades. America has never concerned about what has happened inside. Even, for instance, I can give this ISIS as a sample, because, for instance, in 2014, when ISIS seized control in Mosul, American didn't show any reaction to that. But once they enlarged and expanded their control over Syria border, Iraq-Syria border, then the American conducted military operations against ISIS. So at the end of the day, it seems that Americans are leaving the fate of Iraq to the hands of neighboring countries, and expecting them to, at least on paper, preserve the territorial integrity of Iraq, but in practice, partition Iraq, expand their sphere of influence in name of preserving the territorial integrity of Iraq, and build up a favorable, Western-friendly, favorable balance of power in Iraq.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of have a clue, don't we, about Turkey's intentions. Turkey they always choose these dates when they carry out operations on purpose to give a sort of signal or a message. And so it was on the 24th of April of this year that Turkey began military incursions and invasion of the Matina, Aveshin, and Zat regions of northern Iraq, Iraqi Kurdistan. And it was on the 24th of April, which is the anniversary of the Armenian genocide. So, I mean, there is a school of thought that Turkey over the last couple of years, when you put that together with their actions in 2014, was it? Their invasion of Afrin.
In 2018.
In 2018, their invasion of Afrin, and they're sort of into northern Syria, Sirikani, Girispi. And there's a school of thought that some people think that Turkey are looking to the anniversary, the 100th anniversary of the modern day sort of foundation of the modern state of Turkey, to create new borders. So what is the likelihood of that, and how do you think Iran? How far do you think Iran would let Turkey invade and occupy, especially northern Iraq?
First and foremost, I would like to underline that Turkey can't conduct military operations in Iraq without American blessing. First and foremost, the airspace of Iraq is under the US control, you know. So even if, you know, US didn't support directly Turkey's operations, we can say that keeping indifferent against Turkey's military operations, indirectly, the US have always supported Turkish interference, military interference in Iraq. And this is also true for Syria, for instance, in Afrin. Yes, of course, the east of Euphrates in Syria was under Russian control, and Turkish operation was possible with Russian blessing. However, at the same time, I remember the White House also blessed Turkey's invasion in Afrin by saying that we understand Turkey's legitimate security concerns, whereas the US was claiming that the YPG and the PKK were totally different against Turkish claim. So long and short, I think before evaluating what is taking place today, we have to remember what has happened so far and underline the US indifference or in some occasions indirect support to Turkish military operations in both Syrian and Iraqi theater. And given that, I would also like to remind that Turkey built up its first military bases in Iraq, again by legitimizing its course by reference to PKK. However, it was possible within the context of dual containment, which took place in the 1990s against the Islamic regime in Iran and Ba'athist regime in Iraq. So why I point out this, historical context, because since the Trump's maximum pressure campaign against Iran, which dated to 2018, also dates to the intensifying Turkish military operations in Iraq. So Turkey, who was able to build up military bases in Iraq in the 1990s, basically within the context of dual containment policy, after 2 decades, rebuilt new military bases within the context of maximum pressure campaign against Iran. So these, similarities, I think, gives us an idea about the modus vivendi between, at least modus vivendi, if not a close cooperation between USA and Turkey in terms of the Iraqi policies. Because as you may know, also the Turkish-American relations have faced with quite structural problems and crises in last decade. But within the context of these transactional relations, for instance, they may have not cooperated, for instance, in Syria, but in Iraq, it was clear that whatever Turkey has done in Iraq was not in defiance of the US. So if I have to address your question by reference to Iran, for sure, Turkish military intervention in Iraq is helping the US to contain Iran influence. Which I have just recently said, the US has failed, which is one of the biggest failure of the US in Iraq. So on one hand, this is containment of helping US to contain Iran in Iraq. But at the same time, we have to also mention about the reconstruction project, reconstruction of Iraq project, which against the soul of 2005 Iraqi constitution favors a strong center, namely Baghdad, against the federal governments in the periphery. So such an intensive Turkish operation in Iraqi Kurdistan at the end of the day helps Baghdad to seize more control on Iraqi Kurdistan, which again helps the American plans. And the third dimension of this is related with Syria, or particularly Rojava, because what, as far as I see, or most scholars or experts indicate so, what the Americans are trying to do in Syria is trying to find a kind of reconciliation between Turkey and the autonomous administration of Northeast Syria. And putting pressure on the PKK in Iraq would again inevitably help US to succeed in implementing its policy, or convincing both Turkey and the autonomous administration of Northeast area to reconcile. So these all dimensions together seems to be operational in Iraqi theater, which ultimately indicates that there is a modus vivendi, a common understanding actually between Turkey and the US.
Gosh, that's a lot to take in. And so, in your view, then, I mean, in terms of Turkey's invasion, we have to say that from the Kurdish side, they actually are saying that Turkey are not making that much progress in the Kandil Mountains. But let's say, just for the sake of argument, that they did, and they continued southwards. Do you think then that Kirkuk or Mosul could be within their reach?
I don't think so, not at least at this moment. It seems that disputed areas, not only Kirkuk, but also Mosul and Shingal, seems to be a red line for Turkey. First and foremost, it is we can discuss this by a particular focus on ongoing US-Turkey tense US-Turkey relations. Also, we can focus on the Iranian, influence in disputed areas. So, in 2017, on October 16, as you may all know, the US handed over. Actually, I was there in Iraqi Kurdistan, and from firsthand, I have witnessed what has taken place on the ground. And simply put, the US handed over the disputed areas to Hajj Shabi, which is again and again totally under the control of Iranian Revolutionary Guard groups. So even, let me remind you another very important, incident. For instance, I remember it was like 14 or 13 October 2017 when Trump listed Qasem Soleimani as a terrorist, as a terrorist. But on 16 October, we all have witnessed that Qasem Soleimani, just 2 days after this declaration, was operating and commanding the Hajj Shabi groups in disputed areas. So, long and short, if you turn back to the current situation, since 2017, at the end of the day, the control of the disputed areas, including Kirkuk and Mosul, is mostly under the hand of Hajj Shabi groups. So, replacing, if Turkey attempts to interfere the disputed areas, this will put Turkey and Iran against each other, you know.
Yeah.
It will be a new front between Iran and Turkey, and nobody is ready for that, I guess. Everybody, I mean, when I say everybody, I mean the regional actors currently seems to be keen on a reconciliation in terms of partitioning their, partitioning Iraq by expanding their sphere of influence. However, not to trigger the red lines, but in time, given the Turkish-American relations or given Iran-Turkey relations, I personally can't make any prediction about the future of disputed areas in short term. But I don't expect a change in following days at least.
Okay, well, thank you for that. And so then just moving over the border, passing Sinjar and into northeast Syria, you know, obviously, whatever the realpolitik of it are, you know, the American public and, you know, and the whole world actually witnessed the Kurds' heroic struggle against Daesh, ISIS, in Kobani, in Raqqa, in Deir ez-Zor, and the defeat of ISIS. So with that in mind, and the amazing book that was written by Gail Zamak Lehman, the Daughters of Kobani, which seems to have a lot of influence in the sort of political circles in Washington. Then, and also Nadine Mainzer, who was appointed by the White House. She's the chair of the Commission on International Religious Freedom, appointed by the White House. She has suggested that the best way to protect religious freedoms and indeed, you know, democratic freedoms, just worth pointing out that in the northeast of Syria, that not just the Kurds, but now Kurds, Arabs, Yazidis, Turkmens, all together seem to be agreed that there is a positive political system that is emerging in the northeast of Syria, and she seems to think that the best way to protect religious freedoms in these democracies is by politically recognizing the autonomous administration of North and East Syria. So, from what you just said previously about a potential attempted reconciliation between NES and Turkey, instigated by America, do you think it's likely that America would politically recognize the autonomous administration of North and East Syria?
What America did so far, for instance, concerning the negotiations in Geneva about the future of Syria, doesn't really give much hope for such a recognition in future. You know, sometimes indicating Turkey as an excuse, because Turkey has been always against the involvement of autonomous administration of Northeast Syria to the Geneva talks, or raising some other excuses. At the end of the day, when I look to the American cooperation with the Kurds in Syria, I see that, yes, there has been a military support, but this has never been a robust support for political support. It has never been a robust political support. Yes, there has been a military cooperation. This is first. Second, American has preferred to legitimize their cooperation with the Kurds in Syria by particularly raising the fight against ISIS. They very, rarely actually pointed out the legitimate rights of Kurds, because at the end of the day, the Kurds fought against ISIS, but the real cause, the real motivation of the Rojava revolution, indeed, was to maintain actually the rule of Kurds in Syria, whereas they have, suffered for 100 years. Even they were not recognized as citizens of Syria state. So these two issues, first Geneva talks. For instance, Russia has apparently supported many times. I remember Lavrov, for instance, declared that they support the autonomous administration of Northeast Syria's involvement to Geneva talks, but the US never did so. This is first. And the second is, during the fight against ISIS, I myself don't remember any strong emphasis on Kurdish rights. So these two issues really don't make me feel hopeful for such an official recognition.
Okay, I mean, it's just worth noting that the autonomous administration of North and East Syria now includes much more than just Kurds. So it's rather a kind of political system inspired by the political thoughts of Abdullah Öcalan and democratic nation, which seem to be, actually, from many different independent observers, seem to be welcomed and embraced by not just the Kurds, but by Arab populations, for example, in Manbij and Raqqa, who seemed, to embrace these freedoms that they never had under Assad. And really, I was really quite impressed and surprised to hear some of these stories that many Arabs and different communities of different ethnic origins and religions actually do embrace and support this new system in the autonomous administration of Northeast Syria.
Yes, you are absolutely right. But obviously, such an emergence of a good governance sample has not been supported. Although, as you have said, many people acknowledged the success of such an administration. At the end of the day, politically, none of the states, Western states particularly, gave a clear, robust political support to this administration to help them to survive.
France have sort of. I mean, France have given some sort of support and suggested that they may in the future give some sort of political recognition.
They have conditions. They have conditions which are determined by their American colleagues, like excluding the PKK or rapprochement with Syrian opposition, which are mostly consist of jihadi groups and so forth. So the French support is also conditional. They whatever they provide, which is quite weak, not actually meet. That support doesn't meet with the expectations of the Kurds, and very much conditional, which is at the end of the day not working.
Okay, well, Arzu, I mean, to be honest, we could speak all night about the Kurdish issue in this region, but we literally have a limited time. So just finally to wrap up, I mean, obviously this is all dependent upon, the things that we can't measure, like the resistance of the Kurds, the potential for the Kurdish people to unite against any encroaching threats that they see, and the unknowns. So, with all the recent and ongoing developments in the whole region, in your opinion, what are the likely outcomes for the Kurds in all parts of Kurdistan?
First and foremost, there is no peace in foreseeable future. This is clear. The population of the Kurds in the Middle East is over 30, and those people are quite alienated from the centers of each countries, which we talked about, and socially, politically, even economically, gradually disconnecting with the centers of each country. and trapped trapped and even toasted basically between Iran and Turkey, and experiencing a disappointment, actually. A disappointment because maybe you have also heard depending on the last 2 decades, the course of developments in last 2 decades in Kurdish theater, everybody was saying nothing will be same, in future, nothing will be same like before. But at the end of the day, what they have experienced was worse than the past. So the disappointment is huge, and there is no any peaceful solution for Kurdish question. And what I see is a silent anger, and it is really hard to make a prediction given such circumstances.
Okay, well, I mean, I'm reminded of a Kurdish saying that goes along the lines of increase your cruelty, it will hasten your downfall. And the hope, I guess, from the Kurds is that that conditions will arise that give them reason to unite and to continue to resist. And it's, I mean, I just have to add that I don't have that same pessimistic outlook for the Kurds. I think that the great gains that have been made in Rojava for the Kurds have given inspiration to the Kurds in all parts of Kurdistan. The increasing repression of Kurds in Iran could give rise to further struggles in Rojava, in the Iranian Kurdistan. And when the KRG or the KTP finally realize that they're about to be overtaken and everything's, maybe then will be the time that Kurds will unite there as well. So I suppose we have to hold
maybe
on
lastly,
to some,
Maybe
hold
lastly,
Sorry, I'm sorry.
Just as a last comment on feature, I would like to quote from one of my colleagues, Naif Bezvan. Recently, he said, the peace for Kurds is only possible by change in regimes or by change in political borders. So let's see, although there is no hope for a regime change, because what is taking place, for instance, in Turkey is even that fragile democracy turned into an Islamic autocracy. And in Iraq, the situation more or less, we have talked about it. On the other hand, Iran Islamic regime gradually becoming under control of more extremist groups and so forth. And Syria, Assad is still in office. So within this, a picture, it is hard to be hopeful. But if there will be a solution, as Naif Bezvan suggests, which I also agree with him, the regimes or the borders will change. That would be the only sustainable solution for the Kurdish question in the Middle East.
Dr. Arzu Yilmaz, thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's been really interesting listening to your thoughts. And I hope that maybe sometime in the future when developments continue, that you'll be able to come back and update us on those developments.
You are more than welcome.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.